I've taken some time to think about it, and I realized I got a little too wrapped up in politics recently during the election. For one thing, I should never have even suggested the possibility that Jack Layton would be any different than any other political leader besides Harper. Of course, he's the worst of the worst, but you know what I mean. The NDP here in Nova Scotia are just as bad as I'd expect the Conservatives to be, borrowing $500 million from our deficit for what? To help our economy? How? By luring in immigrants. Oh, I see. You know, if we need certain specialists, we could just educate our own. There's an idea to help us, the people, but no, no. Let's lure in immigrants. How are they going to do that? Probably building up their parks and golf courses in their rich neighborhoods, and then they can bring in more of their friends and family members from other countries of the elite into our country. Oh, I don't mean to imply that everyone who's rich is, corrupt, or not at all. There are good people who are wealthy as well as are poor who are concerned here. And then there are corrupt who are wealthy and corrupt who are poor, who are part of this problem. But anyway, election night, after the results came in, I had a very strong feeling. And I'm talking to a number of people who had the same exact feeling I did. And it was a feeling of death. It was a feeling that something had died. And that feeling of death, that was the loss of our country, or what we thought it was. Subconsciously, we realized we've been screwed and we've lost this country. And I think deep down, we all know it. Think about this. Michael Ignatieff lost in his own riding. Jill Dissect lost in his own riding. How does that happen? Twice during an election. Yet Stephen Harper got in enough ridings to get a majority government, even after being exposed as being a criminal, stealing taxpayers' dollars to fund his already funded, well-funded campaign. Right. So, we're in the situation we're in. The system is working against us. We've lost the system, and we have to fight it. And how will we fight it? Well, we're not fighting it very well right now. We're just spreading information. The truth movement. Good for spreading information. It's not fighting. We're going to have to start a movement of taking action, an action movement. And I'll tell you right now, take note of this. Civil resistance is how you take it back. That's how you take back your country. Muhammad Gandhi proved that. We're not at the point of doing this yet. And the more people be aware of it, but it's time to start taking action. And I myself am going to start. When and how I'm able to, of actually physically being involved in trying to spread awareness on this. And it's like a snowball effect, civil resistance. It can't fail. It wins. The only way it loses is if the Canadian people were to give up midway. Civil resistance is how we can take back our country. It has to start small and it'll snowball. But for right now, knowledge and rallying people up, connecting and meeting people in your own area, connecting and meeting people, and start talking about what you can do to spread awareness and to encourage people. Now, to follow Stephen Harper and what he's been doing recently, G8 in France. The Toronto Sun reports Harper calls for the extension of the war in Libya. The G8 statement called on Syria's government to stop using force on protesters and implement serious reforms, or else the G8 nations would, quote, consider further measures. The Ottawa Citizen reports Harper called for Yemen's embattled president to quit, but refused at the G8 summit here to pledge major new money to help the region transform from a dictatorship to democracy. The Yemen president has refused to give up power in his impoverished country, raising the likelihood that Yemen will plunge into civil war. These civil wars, by the way, help the globalists with their globalist agenda. They're doing rather than them having to send their armies and to break down these governments, to place their own governments in power, the people are doing it for them. I'm not saying that people should not rise up against corrupt governments, but I think that these, I hate to say it, but I wonder if these civil uprisings are not being orchestrated by the globalists, so then they can offer their assistance and their help and then plant their government that they can control in power. But this certainly is about feeding the military-industrial complex. It's not about the people. Stephen Harper wants to go forward, of course, to eliminate the campaign subsidy that helps the other political parties have a voice during election time. Former NCC executive Gary Nichols states that Harper won't stop here. He wants to bankrupt, he wants to destroy the Liberal Party, and he won't stop until he's done it. That was his plan all along. Harper is a cruel strategist. Harper appoints MLAs to Senate who lost in their own ridings. Of course, you're probably aware of this. Preston Manning said of this, quote, "As I understand it, all of these appointments that have been made by the government, one of the conditions is that these new senators will support a Senate reform bill." Of course. Reform! The reformists are in the control of the country. Does everyone realize that yet? Everything will be reformed to serve the globalist interests and also Western Canada corporate interests specifically. But nothing that's good for you or me. Harper has decided to grant a 3% pay hike to 33,700 Ontario civil servants. He'll pay you well if you shut up and don't say anything about what's really going on. Ontario to scrap secret G20 law. Yes, a law that was passed in secret before the G20 in Toronto that allowed police to use a lot more force on the people than they ordinarily would legally be allowed to. Of course, the protesters were told nothing of this. They went in there thinking they could go wherever they wanted to go and protest as normal. Meanwhile, they were battered and beaten down. This was passed in secret. This is the way that Harper and his government and the way this whole country right now is operating. All right, now I just want to read you something here. It's from Google News. Freedom of Expression report gives Harper government failing grade to access to info. When it comes to access to information, Prime Minister Stephen Harper's government has received a failing grade, says a new report that also urges Canadians to remain vigilant on their freedoms of expression. For the second year running, the report by the Canadian Journalists to Free Expression has given the government an F-, saying that delays in the release of information lengthened and what is eventually released was less complete than before. The Ottawa Citizen has an editorial that states, "Tough on crime at home, maybe, but Canada is developing a reputation as being being tough enough when it comes to stopping corruption. Is not being tough enough when it comes to stopping corruption and bribery by businesses and individuals working overseas. Transparency International has scolded the Canadian government for a lack of progress in cracking down on bribery and corruption in an embarrassing public outing at a time when Canada's international reputation, in light of our recent failure to win a seat in the UN Security Council, is already somewhat tarnished. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which has the issue on its agenda, has also singled out Canada in the past as a laggard when it comes to ending corruption and bribery." And oh, you have no idea. That is just the tail end of something. I will go into that in the future when I can. The corruption in this country is unreal, honestly. And I will reveal to you what I can as I can. It's not just at the top that we hear a little bit about on the news. This country has been thoroughly corrupt. There is a criminal movement in this country. The floodgates have been opened. The rats are in the corn, however you want to put it. Things are bad, very bad. And we are going to have to stay vigilant and begin talking and meeting with people and talking action here. Civil resistance is how we'll take back this country. This is just the beginning, the early stages of it. Keep spreading the word. Believe in the people, believe in the future. Peace.